Hello and welcome to So Many Games, independent video game coverage from a passionate group of people. Please check out everything we do at somanygames.co.uk. For episode 11, we continue the AdventureX party, as I have 3 more interviews ready to go, and it's a bit of an old Sky special this one, as the first interview is with the game's composer Thomas Regin, who is followed by the main writer of the game and budget eye man himself, Dave Gilbert. And we finish with part 2 of Sally Beaumont's interview, this time concentrating on her recent BAFTA breakthrough announcement and what part Old Skies played in that success. I'm not going to waffle much longer on this one, but before we get to the interviews, I'd just like to mention our Patreon. Our supporters have been enjoying some of the benefits of being a So Many Games Patreon, including access to 2 Patreon-only articles, a weekly update on So Many Games, and more early access to this and other articles before they release on the website. A huge thank you goes to our current Patreons, Ruz, Kurz, John, Cami and Antonia. You guys rule and we are very grateful to you all. If you'd like to take a look and consider becoming one of the So Many Games crew, then find a link in the show description. With that said, let's get to Thomas's interview, which was taken in the green room of AdventureX. Do expect some slight background noise as people went in and out of the room, and I started our chat by asking Thomas if this was his first time at AdventureX.
This is I believe it's my 6th or 7th time at the AdventureX. So I've been around before.
Can you give the listeners a little bit behind yourself and your music?
Sure. So I am originally from Denmark, now residing in Norway, and I have been writing music for video games for around 20 years. My first game ever was the Blackwell Unbound from Wadget Eye Games, and since then I have been working on a bunch of video games, both from Wadget Eye Games, but I've also written for the Nancy Drew series, and I have written music for a company in San Francisco called Somatone Interactive Audio, where I was working for them for a couple of years, writing music for primarily mobile games and small casual games, but that was a very good experience. So and now I'm primarily focusing on narrative games, because that's where my heart is, and the style of games that I enjoy the most.
Yeah, what is it like making music for like those kind of games?
It's quite a long process, because especially for Wadget Eye Games, because I'm sort of included from the very beginning. Usually Dave will send me design documents and so on, even before he makes the very first line of code, or even before there is any graphics in any of the games. So I get to make, like, I get to be in from the very beginning, which sometimes can be beneficial, but also it's sometimes it's almost like I have too many options. So it's usually a very long process to write a soundtrack for these types of games. I'm gonna say maybe 4 years to before everything is done. Before the soundtrack is done. And I keep making changes up until the very last moment, because once the games get more complete, I will see, oh, here is something I could change. Here is something that would sound better with a different instrumentation. It's a long process.
Yeah, 4 years is quite incredible. It must be quite weird when a project you work on for so long just ends.
It is very weird, and it's both a very happy moment, but also sort of a melancholic moment, because suddenly you're like, if you feel you've been it's kind of like delivering, sort of like having a baby, and you just put it out there, and you hope that people will like what you do, and it's kind of like an emptiness, sort of, that feeling, but also a very exciting moment. So it's weird for sure.
Here at AdventureX, you're part of a panel on the hidden narrative through audio. Do you think most people take what audio does for a game's narrative for granted?
That is a good question, and it depends, I guess, on the developer and who makes the games and so on. But in general, I will say that I feel that music is an overlooked narrative element, and it doesn't take more than a couple of reviews to see that a reviewer will talk about everything but the music. Very often, the second unit assistant gaffer, he gets praise, and the voice actors get praise, and so on, and there is nothing about the music. And I feel that's very sad, because music has such a strong influence on the game and its narrative. It evokes emotions and makes the player feel how the player is supposed to feel in various situations. So I feel that it's quite overlooked.
I mean, I've had many instances of like narrative heavy games where that music has just swelled that moment to hit my emotions in such a way that moment is unforgettable to me right now. And I can't imagine that moment being as impactful if it didn't have that music behind it.
I agree. I mean, it's like watching a movie without the soundtrack. It's going to be a completely different movie. So, and it's the same with games, and that's why we work very hard to evoke these emotions. I've been working with this for several decades, and I'm still learning, and it's a craft to sort of be able to write music that evokes emotions, and not just negative ones.
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously, one of the reasons I really wanted to talk to you was that you're the composer for Old Skies, one of the latest games from Wadjet Eye. Like, that game's incredible. Like, it's definitely one of my favourite games of the year for many aspects, but one of those reasons is the music. Like, how difficult was it to score a game that was deeply rooted in its narrative?
Thank you, first of all. It was really, really difficult to score Old Skies, probably the most difficult game I've ever worked on. And out of for several reasons. First of all, it doesn't just take place in one era. You switch between time period. Even though the game sort of takes place in like semi-present most of the time, like between 2060 and in sort of the time traveling perspective, it doesn't really have a fixed time. But I was going with something that sounded sort of futuristic because of the time traveling element. I wanted to make sure that the music could also be used for traveling back in time and so on. So it was a very difficult task to make music that would sort of fit the whole narrative of the game. And I relatively early on decided that I would not write true era-specific music, because that would be way too difficult. And also, I wanted a more coherent soundtrack that wouldn't break the style too often. So I sort of went with a style that could be used both in the present time and in earlier eras. So the music in Old Skies is not necessarily era specific, but it does have hints of old types of music in the soundtrack.
You said about like you didn't do era specific pieces, because that's what I was going to say to you. Like, I noticed that when I was playing the game, like obviously like the first time that Thea goes back in time, you go back to the 90s, and the music didn't really have that 90s feel to it. But I think I appreciate that, as you said, because you had that consistency throughout the whole game. I think it helped to, for where the story went and how it ended, having that consistency helped.
I agree, and I was taking a chance because it's usually you would write more era specific music, but I was taking my inspiration from movies, where a lot of the soundtracks, even if you travel back in time, they will still maintain that sort of modern orchestral epic soundtrack, even if it's not completely era specific, and it works quite well. And that was what I was aiming for in Old Skies. Whether or not I have succeeded, that I will leave up to the players to decide.
I assume during the process of scoring the music, you must have had many iterations before you landed on the final piece. What are you usually looking for to know you've hit the mark? And was this process easy or difficult with Old Sky?
It was really difficult. I feel that I was struggling quite a lot, and I had many iterations of pretty much every song and every track in Old Skies. I'm a bit too perfectionist for my own good. I always I'm my own worst critic, so I do a lot of iterations. Even if Dave has approved a track, I will go back and I will remake it or make changes because I feel that it's not quite where I wanted it to be. It is a long and tedious process, and there is something for developers. There is something called the definition of done. And it's a term we use because we're never done. In a creative process, you will never ever be done, but you'd have to make a definition sort of from the beginning where you say, well, once you've got something that you're not really disgusted with, because otherwise you could just keep on going.
Well, yeah, that's the thing, isn't it? You say like I get what you're saying about being a perfectionist, like even on this podcast or whatever, I do try to be as good as it can be to my own personal skills. So I know where you're coming from with that. So I guess it must be really hard even with the final project, Did you play Old Skies?
I did play Old Skies, but not the final version, because I do not like to play games with my own music, right. Because I will only sit and listen to all the things that I could have done differently.
That's what I was wondering, yeah, because that must be quite a hard experience for you in that sense to go, oh yeah, I could have probably put a note here, or maybe took that note out there, or.
I will look at some Let's Play, gameplay videos, but I can only last for so long because it's like, oh no, I could have made this so much better.
My last question is, Old Sky does end with a beautiful song over the end credits. What can you tell us about that?
Well, there are two songs with the lyrics. One of them I didn't write. So I think depending on which song you're referring to.
Yeah, the first one, as the end credits just start.
Yeah, that's one of Dave's friends from I guess she's from New York, who wrote this song, and she pitched it to him, or maybe he asked her permission to use it because it was such a fitting song for the end credits. But then there is another song that I wrote, which is a reimagination of a song from inside the game, where Liz she's singing it in a nightclub, and I reimagined this song as a duet between me and her for the second end credits song.
How was that writing that for you?
It was really fun because I kind of love it. It's the original song is kind of like a 1940s crooner ballad jazz song, and that's one of my favorite styles, like old Frank Sinatra kind of music. And I really love that type of music. So that was really fun. And then for the end credits, I made a very an orchestral version for this, and then I used the original sound files that I got from the voice actor and my own voice to make a duet between us. So that was a really fun track to write.
Thomas was a true gent. He was so friendly and open throughout the whole weekend. I ended up having multiple chats with him about games and about his life back in Norway, and his regular 20-minute flights he takes, which was of course of much fascination to me. But now on to our second interview with the raspy Dave Gilbert, which was also taken in the green room. As before, some background noise as people come and go, but it was a delightful chat about AdventureX, Old Skies and much more. So I'm here with a gravelly Dave Gilbert from a very busy after party and just chatting in general over the last few days. Dave, how you doing?
I'm good. My voice is a bit shot, so I'm sorry. I'm kind of waffling between, gravelly male protagonist voice and like one of the Golden Girls. So this will be fun. But it's been worth it. It's been a great AdventureX.
Is this your first AdventureX?
Oh God, no! I've come every AdventureX. I've come to every single one except the first one. So I don't know how many that's been, but it's a lot.
Yeah, it's the first time I've been to an AdventureX. I only learned of its existence this year.
Oh, really?
And I was quite gobsmacked to learn that I've been going since like 2011.
Yeah, it started off like in a pub in a field. It was like above a pub somewhere in a field. And then the next year they moved to London and had it in a university. So like whatever, like there was some magic that was there the first year that made them do it again. And I came because I knew a lot of people here and I make adventure games and I thought it might be cool. Even though I came all the way from New York City. And I left knowing that I was going to come back again. I just had the best time, and every year never fails to meet that same level. It's just always it's kind of a return to Mecca for me. It's like a pilgrimage. Always got to come to AdventureX and recenter.
Yeah, it's a lovely event, and everyone's so open and friendly and welcoming, and it's a lovely time. But of course, you need no introduction. Everyone should know who you are from all your wonderful games for Wadget Eye. But I'm quite interested to know, how that came to be. How did Wadget Eye come to be in life?
Oh, that's a loaded question. Well, I started writing games back in 2001. I've always been interested in writing, and I always liked games. And I living in New York, September 2001. I've told this story many times, but it's like the towers went down and I had been laid off from a job a few months earlier, and I was looking for a way to kind of get my mind off stuff rather than just watch movies all day or whatever. And I discovered Adventure Game Studio, and I made a little game with it in about a weekend, and people seemed to like it. So I kept making them. And eventually I got another job, which I didn't like very much. I decided to leave that job. I kept making games, and I just thought, well, I can't envision doing anything else. And so I kind of threw all caution to the wind and started selling the games full time. I had some money saved up, and I'm like, it's now or never. That was around 2006. And I've been doing it ever since. So it's been a ride.
It's really inspiring though to just get out there and do what your passion.
Oh, thank you. I'm very, very lucky. I'll just say that much, but I'm very, very grateful.
My next question was, how did you end up in game development? But you answered that question for me.
I don't know. I have a tendency to do that because I talk so damn much. I answer questions you haven't asked yet.
Sure. My introduction to your games was Old Skies this year.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
That's quite bad of me to say.
No, not at all. Because the worry, the reason why I love it is because you always wonder if you can like reach new people with your next game. And so if I release a game and people tell me, oh yeah, I had never heard of you before now, like, oh, that means I did something right. I've reached new people somehow. So that's awesome to hear.
Oh, okay, that's cool then. I'll take it.
There we
so,
go.
you know, so learning about Wadget Eye and being introduced to you and your games through Old Sky. Old Sky is one of my favourite games of the year so far.
Thank you so much.
It was such a ride for many reasons. I obviously don't want to get into them too much, but I am quite interested to learn about where the idea for Old Skies came from.
Okay, it's not the most exciting story. Well, basically, oh my god, my voice. I'm really sorry if like this is some of y'all's first introduction to hearing me. This is not how
Hey,
I
I've got an
sound.
exclusive. I've got the Gravelly
Exclusive,
Dave
Gravelly Dave, exclusive. Yeah. Oh my god, listen to me.
Gravelly Dave.
Gravelly Dave.
I
Anyway,
love that.
I will tell you the story in my temporary gravelly voice. Okay, so in 2019, I was a year out of releasing Unavowed, which was the biggest game of my career. It was like this. It was, no false modesty. It was our biggest game that we ever released in terms of sales, in terms of reviews, in terms of critical acclaim, whatever. And so I had a bit of writer's block because I'm like, oh, how am I going to top this? And I was kind of feeling the burden of expectations, which sounds a bit pretentious, but it was true. And there was it was actually Sally who suggested, Sally Beaumont, the voice of Fia Quinn in Old Skies. She suggested that there was a jam coming up. It was a adventure game jam, and I should enter anonymously. And I'm like, yeah, why don't I do that? And I thought I had been playing around with some 3D tools, and I downloaded some asset packs, and there was a city street, kind of a dark city street, and there was a woman model wearing this like futuristic outfit, and I just plunked her into the city and walked around, and I just thought, oh, this is funny. Here's some weird future lady in the modern city. Maybe she's a time traveler. And I just sort of went with that, wrote a little thing that takes about 5 minutes to play. I called it Old Skies. And I had a great time working on it because it was anonymous. And I figured, well, like, if it sucks, no one will know it's me, right? Because I won't damage the brand, as it were. And that being free of that burden of expectation was so cathartic. I had so much fun working on it. And Sally played the lead character, and Edwin Cheong was in it. It was basically like it was Fia and Nazo in a very short little thing. The story was completely different. The setting was completely different. But I had so much fun working on it. I kind of didn't want it to stop. So I'm like, I'm going to turn this into a full game. And eventually I managed to get a design together, and I made the game. So that's pretty much how it started. And, I just sort of built on top of that.
Is that Game Jam version available anywhere?
Yeah. It's on Game Jolt. Like I said, I entered it anonymously. So you'll have to look up Solomon Gillerny. Oh my God, my voice. Solomon, like as in King David, King Solomon, and
Right, okay.
Gil Ernie, like Gilbert, Gil Ernie. I thought it was hilarious. It is hilarious. So yeah, it's on Game Jolt. And since I was anonymous, I used a fake email address, which I could no longer remember. So I can't update it or anything like that. But it's there if you want to play it.
One of the biggest things about Old Skies that I was impressed with is how you dealt with time travel.
Oh, thank you.
It must be quite hard to come up with like an original time travel story these days, considering how many have been done already.
It can break your brain. It did break my brain.
Yeah. But you came up with a way in which to do it in a really like interesting and original way.
Oh, thank you.
How did you land on this idea for like a travel agent style service?
Well, it started off as a much different story. It was like it started off like, okay, basically you are a time travel agency taking clients into the past, but something goes wrong, and you arrive back in your present and everything is destroyed. But you have your some kind of apocalypse took place, but you've got your like time travel gear, so you can kind of go into various eras to try to figure out what happened and try to stop it. So that was my big plot. But I found that it was too big. I found that was just very I don't know. I couldn't get my brain around it. It was just too big a story. And I realized that I tend to thrive in like more grounded personal stories. And I realized that the only part of that version of the game that I was able to really nail was the very beginning when she's taking a time tourist into the past. And so I thought, well, why don't I just make that the game? And I can tell so many stories with that framework. And that was the light bulb moment. It took me, to be fair, it was 2020 at the time. We all had a lot of things on our mind. But that was the light bulb moment. It took me so long to figure that out. But once I did, I'm like, oh, and I had so many ideas, and I wasn't quite sure how it all tied together. I figured that would, as I worked on it, I would figure that out. And I kind of did. And so, yeah, that was a much better framework to base a series of time travel stories around. And so I just really enjoyed that. So that's how that came about.
I really loved the interconnectivity between all the different episodes of the game as well. I wasn't expecting that as a player. I think my expectation was I'm just going to get 5 or 6 separate stories based in separate time periods. So the way in which you connected it all together.
Well, I figured at the bare minimum, at first it was just the individual stories, and I found ways to tie them together. But I figured that if I put most of my effort into those individual stories, because without those, I don't have a game. If those aren't fun, the whole game's not fun. I don't care how well connected all the individual stories are. If the individual stories aren't fun, then the whole thing falls apart. So I figured, well, I don't quite know how they go together yet. If I don't figure that out and it's just 5 or 6 separate stories, fine. That's the game. It's still at least fun. I was glad I was able to tie them together, and I was very pleasantly surprised how I did that. It just came very organically. It's what does this kind of life do to you? And then I just did that to Fia, and it worked out really well.
It's in one of the later chapters, I think, but you have to go back 3 times. Yeah. What was that like? Was that a bit of a mind?
A bit, yes and no, because Sally helped with some of the narrative design, and I mostly put her on that one, mainly because I knew it would be complicated. All I knew when I started, I kind of had a brief overview of how each chapter should go, and that one I just had this idea of some kind of corporate environment where you have these 2 executives kind of competing for the CEO position. And one of them gets it, and the other one spends the next 20 years bitter, and they hired the time travel agency to go back and change it. And so you do it, and you're successful, but then the other CEO, hires you to do the same thing, and it has to hinge on one specific day, and so you have to go and avoid yourself while changing it, and then the same thing happens again. The other CEO is oh no, change it back, and you got to do it again. And I just envisioned this this farcical, overlaying thing where you're constantly having to avoid yourself. Sally called it, a bit of slamming doors, an old farce, like a Marx Brothers movie. And that's what we were trying for. I mean, really with an adventure game, it's all about pacing. And since you can't control that, it wasn't as madcap as I would have liked it to be, but it was fun. So just based on that, overview, I asked Sally if she could help, because I was working on the rest of the game, and that was already proving to be very overwhelming, and I just needed some help. And I said, would you be, because she's a great comedy writer. She's actually doing a panel on that later. I asked her if she'd be interested in working on that. And she said she would. And she came up with all the characters, the setting of Leaves, and what their deal is, who the individual characters are, kind of what their arcs are, and basically created a great foundation for me to just sort of riff off of. And it was nice being collaborative, because I kind of added a lot of more of the gameplay puzzly stuff, but then she had all the characters, and all of the puzzly stuff kind of flowed from that. So it's where my ideas begin and hers begin, all kind of merged together, and it was really collaborative, and I loved that. That was it was very meaningful to work on that with her.
Yeah,
it was very special.
Yeah, it must have been lovely.
Yeah.
Fia's development throughout the game was a joyous surprise as we were playing.
I don't know if I'd call it joyous.
Well, yeah, I guess for Fia,
Yeah.
probably not. But for me, as a player, it was, her struggles with time travel, to her relationship with Imani.
Oh yeah, that took me by surprise. I had never really done like flirty, like sexy dialogue before.
Yeah.
I've had characters in relationships and characters like they might flirt, but they never have to it never goes beyond that. I never had like, all right, we're meeting, we're flirting, and we're like hooking up. Like I've never done that kind of dialogue before, and that was a challenge, but a lot of fun. Once I just dived in, and I was just like, okay, this is fun. I'm just going to roll with this. And that relationship really took me by surprise of how engaging it was. And I ended up rewriting a chunk of the game to make it more, front and center, because it really worked. And I was very happy about that.
I think there was a point in the game where Fia was like, I'm not going back. I'm going with Imani just to go and have some nookie or whatever. And I was like, whoa, that took me really by surprise. I know in the game, like you've set up the rules of like only if you stop certain people, then that will hit the timeline and affect history. So it's a bit more freeing in Old Skies.
A bit. It wasn't entirely consistent because when I first started writing it, like I had like, oh, you must protect the timeline. So every time you pick up an object, it's like, does opening this door, did that change anything, Nazo? Like if I pick up this thing off the street, did that change anything? And that got really boring very fast. And so I just decided to like, it's all fine. Paradoxes are fine. Things constantly change, within limits. I couldn't let it be completely chaotic. But and then I took that farther and I thought, well, if your personal history is constantly changing, what does that do to you? I guess it's no surprise that I conceived of this during lockdown, because it's just like, yeah, it kind of turns you very nihilistic. And that was actually the worry, because in order for that to land, she had to start off very nihilistic and very disaffected. And my worry, which turned out to be unfounded, and I'm very grateful, is that people would be turned off by her as a result. Because it's like, who is she? Why is she so cold? It's because she lives this way. And then as it goes on and she starts to like come to realization about how she's living, you see how she's changing. And I loved how that worked. And I guess it was very much my own state of mind, like during lockdown and seeing what was happening in my country and all this stuff. So there was a lot of personal stuff in it that I didn't realize at the time.
Old Skies kind of really explored the themes of time passing as well, with the chrono shifts, which made the narrative even more interesting through the game and how it affected the characters.
Oh, thank you.
How did this idea come to be, and like, did it evolve during the development?
Well, yeah, like I said, the whole idea of, at first it was like, I didn't want to have to deal with like, oh, you're constantly watching out for paradoxes and making changes. And it freed me to just kind of relax the rules and do whatever I wanted. Like, okay, maybe there's some things you can't change. If it's too important or whatever, like you can't change it because you have to have limits. Like I did a bit of, I read a bunch of time travel media, and the best ones, like the really good ones that people remember, or the ones that tend to like be more, like take Back to the Future, for example. It never, like the stakes and the location never goes beyond Hill Valley, and the stakes never go beyond like Marty and Doc and their immediate family. It's and I don't know if that was by like mandate, where they realized that as they were writing it, or they were just instinctual enough writers to impose those limits on themselves. But it works really well because time travel, the possibilities are just endless. You can let yourself go nuts trying to cram all the possibilities in, because there's so many possibilities. So you have to put some limits on yourself. And when I made Old Skies, I decided, well, okay, it's all gonna take place in New York. There's like the New York branch of this agency, and it's chapter based. And like you can't just go to any era whenever you want. It's very expensive, energy resource heavy. So it's like you pay a lot of money to go. So once you go to a place, you stay there, or maybe you go to like maybe a month earlier or something like that, if the individual story calls for it, but it's within the same like area, reasonably around the same amount of time time period, if that makes any sense. Basically, I kept it very simple and then just sort of added complexities on top of it. And I'm sorry, I feel like I've lost the thread of your question. I tend to do that. What was your question again?
It was just about the chrono shifts and
the chrono shifts. Well, that basically, like I said, it was very much a lockdown story. And the chrono shifts basically really isolate these characters. And I felt very isolated, and I just, it was something that maybe subconsciously called out to me, is just exploring that. And, like, what does this kind of life, it is really cool to see like all the changes in history. That's really, really cool. But then, like, what does that do to you, to be that you can't make any kind of real connections or relationships, or even enjoy a movie or a book, because it could be changed the next day. Everything is always constantly different. It's like at one point in the game, Nazo says he wants to go see this art exhibit before a chrono shift. So it's like, those tickets are expensive. It better not chrono shift before I go, that kind of stuff. And so it was fun to explore that, and just what it also what it just how it kind of applies to real life. It's like kind of a metaphor for death in a way, because it's like, why make these changes in history when they can just change again? It's like, anything can change. Anything can be taken from you at any moment. And it was kind of a very subconscious, but not very subtle metaphor. And I realized that's what this is about. All right, I'm just going to roll with that. And that was neat to explore too.
Yeah, because always had the memory of Thea being with Duffy in the bar, and she gets a phone call. They have the chrono shift, and then all of a sudden she's got a husband.
That was interesting, because originally it was a lot. Well, the first draft of that, it was even worse. It was like he was in the hospital and she needed to donate blood or he'd die, and she's like, he'll be gone in a half hour anyway. That was too cruel. So I changed it. Okay, he's at soccer practice. It's raining. You should pick him up. Not. And she's like, oh, whatever. And then which is still mean, but not like cruelly evil. But then a lot of the testers were very affected by that. They're like, I should go get him. And they felt really bad that they felt really pissed off at Fia for not even considering it. So I'm like, all right, I'll make it a choice. And then you can choose to go up and get the kid, or you can stay. But either way, there's another chrono shift, and it doesn't matter. And that also really hammers home what these characters' lives are like. And I kind of love that. It's like this, you wonder why they're so disaffected. This is why.
Yeah.
Nothing matters. And I kind of love that for them.
Yeah, and it really made it like you just didn't really know what was going to happen next.
Yeah.
So as a player, that was really exciting for that aspect.
Oh, I'm glad. I'm really glad it landed.
Yeah.
Because I overthought this thing to death.
No, it really did land. Talk to me about Nozzo, because I love to hear of his creation, and it feels as much fun to write for as he was in the game.
Oh yeah, I mean, well, I guess it helped because in that original Jam game I wrote, I asked Edwin if he could be Nozzo, and once I knew Edwin was going to be that character, I just knew how he'd sound. I've worked with Edwin quite a few times. I know what he's good at, and I could just hear him as I was writing, and I could just sense their dynamic, and that's always fun. I don't always know who's going to voice a role as I'm writing it, but with them, I knew. They both agreed to come back for the main game, so I wrote to them. And Sally and Edwin are friends, and they so often I'd write a line and Sally would see it. She's like, "Oh, I know exactly how Edwin's going to say that," and he would say the same thing. And it was just being able to play with that and knowing they're friends, and it's like having a lived-in relationship is a lot of fun to play with, because they can dig at each other but have a lot of respect, and so they kind of fill in each other's weaknesses, or if Fia's worried and freaking out or something, Nozzo will step up, and vice versa. I made a point of making them very equal, and so he was an interesting character to play with, because he kind of was the extreme version of what could happen to you if you lived this life for too long, and in the end you kind of see him. I don't want to spoil it, but I did enjoy writing him as well, and just Edwin's a joy. Edwin's a pure joy. I love the guy.
It's really cool. I think I said to Sally when she came on the podcast, the chemistry, not only between the characters on the screen, but also between her and Edwin was clear to see, and I was really surprised that they never really recorded their lines at the same time.
I know. I really wish I could have figured that out. But with Sally in England, me in New York at the time, and Edwin in Australia, like I don't know how we could have figured that
Yeah.
out. One of us would be recording like in the dead of night or super early in the morning, or it was just I didn't even try. I didn't know how I would do that, but I could do a decent Nazo impression. Don't ask me to do it now. My voice is shot. But like, do not. I didn't even bother doing Sally's voice for me. Like, every time I try to do a British accent around her, she laughs. And it's just so I didn't even try. But like, just knowing like how they were going to say things, but they would still surprise me. That's the wonderful thing. Like, oh, I can hear Sally's voice when I say this, or I can hear Edwin's voice, and then they'd record, and it would surprise and delight me, even though like I knew it's wonderful. The one thing I miss the most about working on that game is working with the voice actors. I would write more Old Skies just so I could work with them more.
Later in the game, Thea travels to September 2001, September the 10th, which prominently featured the Twin Towers.
Yes.
This took me back. I'm sure maybe a lot of people have said this to you. I don't know. But
Yeah.
it was the first time that I'd seen any kind of reference to the Twin Towers or that time period in a video game. What can you tell us about the decision to visit this time period, and how much work did you put in to deal with it in the touching and sensitive way that you did?
Oh, thank you. First of all, thank you. I really did try to handle it respectfully because, as I mentioned earlier, I lived through that. Yeah. I didn't see them fall, but I did see them on fire. We were like on the way to my grandmother's funeral of all things, and we were driving, and we looked up and like, okay. Yeah, that was a day, but I won't go into that. But having lived through it, and enough time. I remember when I worked on Blackwell Unbound in, I think it was 2007. It had only been 6 years, and there was a shot of Manhattan skyline, and I kept thinking, should I put the Twin Towers? I mean, that's where they would have been, right here. And it felt like the most like subversive thing. It felt like I shouldn't do it because like there was a sense that you shouldn't call attention to it. Movies would like digitally edit them out. That came out the following year, and it felt really weird to do that. It was just vaguely there. You could see them, but and then years later, it's 2020. I don't know what year I was actually working on that section or designing the game. I decided, well, okay, here I have a whole bunch of time travel stories that are taking place in New York. Like if there was ever a story that I personally could tell, because having been there, I am in a unique position to tell that story or tell a story because I remember what it was like. And I deliberately didn't want to like show the event happening or like be there on the day or like it's not going to be some epic rescue someone from the attack. Like it was going to be nothing like that. But I knew like having that event hanging over, the story gave it this extra something. The story is about a police officer whose friend got murdered the morning of September 11th, but it was obviously never properly investigated because of what happened. So she wants to go back and, she does later find out who killed her friend, but because he confessed years later. So she wants to go back and stop it. And just having this, the 9/11 event overhanging that gave it a lot of something. And then of course you travel like to like a month or two after September 11th. So, and I really remembered what that was like. And because it felt cowardly to not address it. And then like, as I was working on the story, a lot of it involved like you do something and then it affects the future. And originally it's just Nazo telling you what happened. But then I'm like, no, they always say show, don't tell. But in a game, it's like you don't just show, you have to experience it, right? So you're a time traveler, you can go forward and see the results of the things you did. And so you go forward like 2 months, like November 2001, and you see how everything's changed. and I lived through it. I remember how everything changed. Just like the surge of patriotism, the messed up adoration of Mayor Rudy Giuliani, which sounds insane now. Just like all the graffiti, just that sense of doom that hung over everything. I so remember what that was like. And I, having gone through that, I'm not saying no one else could do this, but I was in a position where I could bring that to life. And enough time had passed where I felt ready. Like, I'm like, this is something I want to do. I feel, I can't say it was fun, but it was very cathartic to like do something with all those feelings that I had been, feeling since it happened. And a lot of the characters' thoughts about that day kind of were parroted mine. I think at one point, a character talks about the event. She's like, yeah, I looked down and all I could think of was, it looks like two giant cigarettes. And that's what went through my mind when I saw them. And I just gave that line to her and stuff like that. And it was nice to be able to do something. As a creator, that's why you create something. You feel compelled for some reason. And I'm really glad it landed with people. I'm really glad other people felt, whatever it was I was trying to convey. I'm really glad it landed. So thank you.
You're welcome. No, it's, obviously being English, we only ever saw it on the telly.
Mm-hmm.
We could obviously get a idea, obviously, of what it was like there, but obviously we didn't get the full experience. So to be able to experience something like how you handled it in Hold Skies, it was helped to understand it a little bit more, what people were actually feeling and emotionally wise at that time.
Like Fia herself is so far removed from it. Like it's literal ancient history for her. It's like talking about the Titanic or the Hindenburg. Like, it's a thing that happened so long ago for her that it doesn't really affect her as much. So that enabled me to get a bit of distance from it, which helped because it was, it was like I said, it was a day. It was like, I remember like doing the placeholder background for that first shot where you see the Twin Towers. I'm like, okay, here I go. And I like, even just drawing them felt like it absolutely insane. It's weird because it is like, it does feel like a taboo subject sometimes. I think it was the Yahtzee fully emblematic review. And it's like, yes, you go to the 1800s, you go to the 1920s, and I kid you not, September 11th, 2001. Like, it was this insane thing to do. And I'm like, wow, Yahtzee's calling me on this. But I did it anyway. That's like, no one would know. It's virtue of being self-published indie. No one can tell me no.
But yeah, beautiful. But no, I mean, I was really glad that you included it for all the reasons that you've just said. And it just, yeah.
I was worried a little bit about the tonal whiplash because, like, I guess the one advantage to each chapter being a chapter, an episodic, is that each one could have its own tone. Because you had like the Prohibition mission, which was like madcap screwball comedy with these like, these drunk Prohibition, crazy people. And then you had the one you mentioned before with the time loop. And that was just zany, farcical, slamming doors type thing. And then you have September 11th, where it's like really, really oppressive and depressing. I'm like, are people going to feel weird about this? But whatever, I just went with it anyway.
One last question before we go, Dave. And obviously you've just recently announced your next title, Guilt. Obviously, I know you can't say too much about it, but...
I mean, I could say what I know about it. Well, basically, if you've been following us for a while, you probably know the name Ben Chandler. He's done almost every pixel of art for us since 2013, since Blackwell Epiphany. He's done like all the backgrounds, all the sprites, for like the Blackwells, Shardlight, Techno Babylon, Unavowed and Old Skies. And, he's done a lot of art on Nighthawks, which isn't out yet. And he asked me as Old Skies was wrapping up, he said, hey, I've got this idea. I would love to like write the next game, and I will, do the art for it. And, I'd like to spearhead it. And I said, okay. Mainly because like at this point, he's earned the right to do whatever he damn pleases. He's just so good. And like, I'm so grateful for all the work he does. And so like, he's part of the company, so he like gets paid, and everything. And so it's like Wajidai is building another game, even though I personally am not. And it's kind of working out well in that respect, because I had a feeling, and I was right, that Old Skies would burn me out. And I'm still recovering, right? I'm still trying to get my brain back. I apologize. There's quite a few people I've flaked out on this year because my brain just was not in my head. And I feel really bad about that. They're all here and I've apologized like crazy. I'm so sorry. But that's just what happens. We don't talk about that enough. Creative burnout. I had it big time, but I knew that it would take me a while to get my groove back, as it were. And so it was a good time for Ben to take the lead on a project and work on something. So the company is still making something. And I'm playing bills and I'm giving feedback and I'm doing the things I usually do as a producer. So that's nice to take a more adversarial advisory role, I guess. Not adversarial. I love Ben. So that's been nice. And I always can say at the bare minimum, the game will look fantastic because it's Ben. But in terms of what the game is, Ben could go into more detail, but basically it's about it's a sci-fi fantasy world. You're on a planet called Gilt that has all this, that was the technological powerhouse of the galaxy. And they worship a goddess named Lumen. And for centuries, they've been worshiping this goddess. And the planet is kind of like a shadow of its former glory at this point. But the temple is still going strong. And you play a priest who's been, if there could be the best priest, he's the best priest. He's about to win all these awards and these honors and be elevated to this something or another. And yeah, I'm going off track. But basically, Lumen appears and is you've got me all wrong. Everything's wrong. You're doing everything wrong. You're destroying everything. And so she basically haunts Demas. And so together they need to go out into the world and kind of fix everything. And it's really deep on themes. It really some big ideas. Lumen grants Demas some special powers. So there's a lot of puzzly magic stuff that happens, and Ben is really good with puzzle design. Everyone always complains that I don't have very good puzzles in my games, and I own that. I'm not good at puzzles. Ben's doing some really neat puzzles. So puzzle people will be very happy. And of course the art's amazing. The character's amazing. Thomas Regin's doing the music. And so that's also amazing. So yeah, I'm so happy with it so far. Every time he sends me a build or shows me art or anything he's done, we talk every day about it. I'm just so giddy with happiness because the stuff he's coming up with is stuff I would never personally be able to come up with. And so that makes me happy, is having that happen. But he told me, he's I don't want to draw another city street. No more offices. I'm not drawing another urban apartment. It's all weird sci-fi fantasy stuff, from here up everywhere. Cause that's what he usually draws for me. And I'm all right, go nuts. So he's kind of really allowing his imagination to take hold, because when he has to do the work for someone else's vision, he couldn't do that. So ideally is that while he's working on that, I'm designing and kind of working on my next thing. And then I will have that ready to go by the time he's finished, and he'll be able to transition into doing the art for the next project. So ideally, best laid plans and all, but that's what we're hoping will happen. So makes sense on paper. We'll see what actually happens. But in the meantime, we'll have a really cool game out of it because Gilt is looking really good. And Ben is seen enough games being made by a lot of different people who have published under Wachidai that, he knows the pitfalls and he's well aware of how this works. So I'm excited. I'm super excited.
Yeah, no, it looks amazing. And it gave you the opportunity to, announce it on a plane.
Yeah, I announced it on a plane because I think it was Adventure Game Hotspot. We gave them an exclusive to announce it, but they couldn't announce it until a certain time. And they asked me if I could have delayed releasing the Steam page. And I'm well, I'm going to be on an airplane, but hopefully I can get online. And I was able to get online. I paid, however much it cost for really, really bad Wi-Fi, but
Yeah.
I was able to launch the Steam page, not launch the game, but release the Steam page on an airplane. So I didn't know that was on my bucket list, but I've done it, and I'm really happy about that. I get to say I launched the Steam page from a plane. I'm some like very boring version of the Mile High Club is what I joined.
It was such a pleasure to meet Dave and to talk to him face to face about the subjects we did. I admired his honesty and for sharing some thoughts at that terrible time back in 2001. Sally is up next. She, as always, is a delight, and it was incredibly fulfilling to hear her story on becoming a BAFTA breakthrough act, what that will bring to her career, and of course, more Old Skies chat. So Sally, you're a BAFTA breakthrough artist for 2025.
Yes.
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 Can you explain what the scheme is and why it's such a big opportunity for the people who get included into it?
Well, the idea is that the BAFTA Breakthrough Scheme every year kind of celebrates 20 emerging creatives across TV, film, games, and across all sorts of different disciplines like producer, director, composer, voice actor, writers, and basically raises their profile and offers them support and kind of mentorship over the course of the year. It's sort of like a career springboard, if you like.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm obviously, I mean, I'm not in the industry. I'm not really heard of it before, but
All right.
until now. But it sounds like such a great initiative for people that are in the industry, just to get that little bit more support. I guess is
Yeah.
probably a good word, because you do, don't you? You get quite a lot of help and support now, won't you, for the next year?
Yes. Even above that, you sort of get the BAFTA stamp of approval, which is pretty incredible. Having my name associated with BAFTA is, I'm still slightly getting used to it. You can probably tell.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
sort of like,
exactly.
me? Really? Are you sure? But yeah, that's really exciting. And I'm kind of excited most about the rest of my cohort, the other people in this year's breakthrough. There's so many talented people, and 5 of us are in games, so I'm not saying that there would be a collaboration, but I would be open to that. And I think it's super important to be to network with your peers, not just with people that are kind of more accomplished than you in various industries. I think your peer group is so important as you're going through your career. So it's just really lovely to have a bunch of people to kind of go through this next year with, and to get to know and kind of find out all of their cool skills and disciplines. It is a really talented bunch. I'm really honoured to be there. Really honoured.
Yeah, because I listened back to the Classic FM hour that they dedicated to the BAFTA breakthrough. I was surprised on how many people from video games are actually included in it, and I thought it was just like a really, really cool that happened. You know, that people are taking video games that seriously. That it really made me smile.
Yeah, same. That was my response as well. That BAFTA is mainly associated with film and television. It's in the name, and for them to be acknowledging video games as the art form that they so clearly are, and that it also it's kind of a useful way for me to show that video game acting is acting, and video game writing is writing, because I'm on a par with all these other people in the other disciplines, and it also is a really handy way for me to kind of shorthand working in different mediums as well, because I still work in film and television and theatre, and sometimes get sort of confused faces about this video game nonsense, and I'm kind of hoping that having the association with BAFTA and the breakthrough scheme, that will really kind of open those things up a little more for me. I think you can probably tell I'm most excited about the possibilities of what is to come, the opportunities I don't even know about. That's very exciting for me.
Obviously, getting to go to all the BAFTA, well, not parties, you know, all the BAFTA ceremonies, I guess, and all that you can go and enjoy as well now, can't you?
Yeah, I mean, I am now a BAFTA member as well, so I'm like, I'm not fully exploring what that means just yet. I'm just excited.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just we had a photo shoot at the BAFTA building, and I had a proper kind of out of body experience getting in a cab and saying, "Can you take me to BAFTA?" And just kind
Yeah,
of like,
that must have been.
this is happening, and
Yeah.
just walking in and seeing all of the BAFTA statues and all the photos of the amazing people all along the corridors and things, and just kind of going, oh wow, this is really happening. That's really exciting.
What was that photo shoot like for you? Was it as much fun as it looked?
Yes. I hope it looked fun because I was having fun. Yeah, well, I didn't really know how I was going to cope with it all because it's probably about 5-6 years since I've done a photo shoot like that, and I had a chat with the BAFTA Access team about ways that they could accommodate my chronic pain and so on, and also to make it a COVID safe shoot. And they were just so lovely about the whole thing. Sometimes you think I'm asking a big organisation to do stuff, and they'll probably say no. Why would they bother? No, no, no. They were wonderful. They were 100% there to support me through the whole thing. And so it meant that I knew I could rest whenever I wanted to, that if something was too much, I could say something, and just got to actually enjoy the process. I do enjoy shoots. I mean, they can be very, very tiring, and you know, I think that's true for everyone. But you know, going through wardrobe and picking the right outfit and getting sent to hair and makeup, and you know, it was really good fun. They really worked hard to make us all feel really special. I suppose we all kind of are, but
Yeah, definitely.
yeah, and yeah, the whole photography team as well. The whole atmosphere of it was so positive, and just that the focus was on us feeling our absolute best in this brilliant moment, and just I just felt really kind of confident and happy. I hope that came over
Definitely.
in our little shoot. But yeah,
So was it your choice for that dress? Because that was a really awesome dress.
it's a great dress.
Yeah. Did you get to keep it?
No. I did go out and buy something very similar though.
Oh, okay. Yeah, why not?
Why not? But yeah, no, it was the first thing I tried on. There were a bunch of other things, but I just kept coming back to that and going, no, this is my big moment. It requires a red dress.
Yeah. Obviously, you have to apply for the BAFTA breakthrough. You know, what made you apply? What kind of thought process did you go through to get to that point?
What were you thinking, Sally? So it's something that I wanted to apply to for a couple of years, and obviously seeing Sam Bayard in Hobbs Barrow get their BAFTA breakthrough in 2023 really kind of drove home to me that, you know, if you're a protagonist in an adventure game and you do a really good job, guess what? BAFTA might pay attention. And in the back of my mind, when I was working on Old Skies, I was thinking, is this going to be the one that lets me apply? Because you have to have a significant role in the game. So, you know, like lead voice actor or lead writer or composer or something like that. And the project itself also has to have a not necessarily like a high profile, but it has to be kind of creatively significant. And so whenever I'm working on indie games, I never know how they're going to do until they're out. It's always a surprise. You just never know. And so all the time I was working on Old Skies, I was thinking, is this the one? And as I was doing writing on it as well, it just sort of felt like there's so much Sally in that game, for better or worse. It's a very Sally game. And, you know, I've put my heart and soul into it. Dave has been very lovely about talking about this, that I put everything into that role, that game, the writing, the acting, all of it. And when the applications opened, I was just like, yeah, you've got to. How many times does this sort of role come along? How many times has this happened to you? And I think having had the previous few months of the reviews, which were they completely bowled me over. I was hoping for good reviews for the game, and what I actually got was a huge swathe of them specifically calling out my performance as being excellent in it. And that was a real shock because, I'm used to playing NPCs. I'm used to being background. I'm flavour. I'm not the main focus. And every so often, a reviewer might sort of point out that I've done a very good job and so on. But to have for Old Skies just over and over, and we got to mention Sally Beaumont and what she's doing, and it's just it was a challenge to my British modesty. Let's say that we're all sort of trained a bit to not get too big for our boots. I'm very grateful to be working with an American on this. Right, it does really change your perspective. Like, you were really good in it. You should get good reviews. No, I couldn't possibly. Oh no, wait, no. Maybe this is fine. Maybe it's completely normal to acknowledge your achievements in this way. And so while I was applying for BAFTA Breakthrough, I was putting together a document of all of these reviews, and I was looking at it and going, yeah, this is a bit of a breakthrough, isn't it? Okay, I think I'm on the right track. And I told you this before, that I also submitted some of my podcast interviews about Old Skies, including this one. And so, this streamers, podcasters, the whole kind of ecosystem of games, particularly adventure games, is so important, and I cannot do this on my own. It's been possible because people have paid attention to me and my work, and I'm kind of humbled by that enough people kind of supported my work to make it possible for me to apply for something like this. But yeah, the process of applying is quite detailed, and you have to provide lots of evidence and things. And part of you is thinking, oh, do they know anything about games? Am I going to have to explain like what an adventure game is? Or no, it was all fine. Yeah, I'm so glad that I did. It's really rounded out 2025 as a really good year.
Yeah. Like, obviously, should I apply? Will they say no, whatever? But like you say, it's just like, why not? Just chuck it in and see what happens. They just might say yes.
Exactly. I think I say this when I audition a lot, because the vast majority of auditions that you do as a voice actor, you'll be rejected by, and you'll probably never hear back from them. And it is, a rarity to book something. That's just how the numbers work out. And the thing is, if you don't apply for something, you've kind of taken away their ability to say no to you, to keep yourself safe, because you never hear the no if you don't apply. And it's a way of kind of avoiding sadness and disappointment. And so I knew I'd put everything into that game, and if ever there was a project that would get me in, it was this. And if they didn't agree, that's absolutely fine. They did agree, which is a big relief. But if they hadn't agreed, I would still be completely proud of what I'd done.
Yeah.
And actually, some of the stuff that I wrote for the application about the way that character changed me, and the change in my perspective working on that game, that alone was like, oh, I didn't realize I felt that way. Okay. So I learned a lot about myself by applying, full stop. So, I got my money's worth out of that.
Definitely. I mean, I was going to ask you, what specifically do you think it is about Old Skies and Fear that helped with BAFTA's decision?
Oh, I mean, I couldn't speak for BAFTA.
No.
But I think the impression I get from players, from the reviews, and just general like social media chatter is that so many people get so much out of that story. Slightly different angles of the story. This is going to sound really simplistic, but the sort of message of the game being about grabbing life with both hands. That life is about connecting with other people, going for it 100%, living life rather than worrying about what might have been, because that's how you avoid regret. And that the whole of Fia's journey is a move from being disconnected, from pulling back, from being too cool to care about things. And through the game, she learns to be vulnerable, to care, to open up, to get hurt a lot. And she decides it's worth it anyway. And I think that's really magical. And I think that story, and it's told through the lens of sci-fi time travel. So it's fun and entertaining, but it is that story about life is for living, and we don't know how things are going to turn out. And that's the joy of it. That's really magical for me. And I think that's what people have latched onto with that game. You know, it's not a loud game. It's not got a gimmick to it. It's confident in its subtlety. It knows what it wants to be and do. And I think anyone who's kind of spent time with the game, it's really had an impact on them, and the character too of Fia. I think one of the things I said really early on to Dave is that I kind of want people to not really notice that they like Fia until it's too late. That she's not a character that needs you to like her immediately. She's not going to burst onto the screen and have all these quirks and loudness. She just is with you in this game. And a lot of people through that first mission are like, I don't actually think I like her that much. Or it's fun to play someone who's vaguely unlikable sometimes, and she has unlikable moments throughout the story. But that by the time you're getting to mission 2, mission 3, you didn't feel the knife go in. You care about this woman. You're interested in what she's doing and where she's going and what she thinks about stuff. And then you're locked in, really. Yeah. Then we can do what we like with you because you're invested.
Yep. Yeah, that's how I felt when I was playing it. So, yeah, and then obviously the curveballs that get thrown at you in the latter part of the game just made it, whoa. You know, so, yeah.
Some good twists, some really good twists. And of course, I had no idea they were coming because we made it episodically. So, you know, I did not know the ending when we were recording mission 3, and just like I got surprised through the process as well. So, you know, really good twists.
That must be quite good though, in a way, for you. Does it like impact your performance in some ways, like in earlier episodes to later episodes?
I mean, there's some things that, you know, had I known certain things were going to happen, I would have probably made slightly different choices with the performance, but nothing that would have fundamentally changed how anyone experiences the character. It's more my internal landscape of understanding things. And, you know, your job as the actor is to play the circumstances that are in front of you. None of us knows what the twist is going to be 4 months from now, so we can't play that twist. So I guess she had a very similar kind of arc that, you know, I didn't know what was going to happen to her, and she didn't know either.
You had a writing, you know, you were involved in part of the writing of Old Skies, which obviously helped with the BAFTA application.
Yes.
But I'm quite intrigued because I think wasn't your biggest chunk of writing in the game the episode where you have to go back 3 times?
Yes. So it's a little bit complicated.
Yeah, because when I was speaking to Dave and like we kind of broached that episode, and he was like, well, yeah, Sally wrote that episode. She kind of came up with the characters and everything else, and that made me even more intrigued to want to ask you about it, because that particular episode was kind of a bit of a mind kind of thing. It kind of threw your mind through the loops because of all the
it does as a writer
things
as well. Yeah.
So what was it like for you to try and write that?
It took me a really long time. I remember thinking when I started out, I don't know how to do this, but I know when I've finished, I'll be really proud of myself. And I was right, thank goodness. So there's Sally's lecture on how to write time travel. So one of the things that I do in theatre, in both acting and writing, is a lot of farce. So, doors slamming, things getting very complicated, people running into each other. You can see where I'm going with this. And I thought, okay, well, that's something I know about. And this idea of having loops and trying to avoid yourself and door slamming and going into and hiding and all the rest of it, and trying to stop people finding out your secret because you might melt, that feels like a farce. And I kind of went out on a limb a little bit because so Dave's writing style is much more dramatic. I always say he has this wonderful gift for kind of yearning, this writing about yearning. And from what I'd seen of the game so far, there wasn't a mission where time travel was just silly and ridiculous. It got to that point in certain missions, but what I really wanted was to give the player almost like a playground to realise how ridiculous Fia's day-to-day life was doing these sorts of jobs that, she's trying to help a salad company change leader, and if she meets herself, she's going to melt space-time. And just like the stakes are simultaneously very high and very low. And for me, that kind of really spoke to my comedy brain. And you can tell that that's a big gamble to write something fundamentally very silly in the middle of quite a serious game with really serious themes. But I kind of went for it. Sometimes you have to be the writer that you are. Dave wouldn't have given it to me if he didn't think I could handle it. So, and it could have ended up in the bin. So it didn't. That's good.
No.
But essentially what I tried to do was invent a way of making it feel like time was passing, so that there would be that urgency, that sense of time and loops crossing over, without it actually being a timed mission at all. Because I don't really enjoy timed video games. I have terrible coordination, so I always try and skip those. And I've realised, sort of as I'm saying this, that it's essentially the same mechanism that is in Seance of Blake Manor. That does it sort of minute by minute, which is really, really smart. The way that I sort of designed my mission was in what I call chunks. So every time something would happen, it would move on to the next chunk. And then what I would do is I come up with silly names for everything. I created what I call time landmarks. So particular things that would happen very loudly that you could tell throughout the mission were happening at that point, and that allowed you to feel where you were in the loop, depending on how many times you'd come back. You're like, it's the thing with the dressing has just happened, so now I know where the other versions of me are right now. And it meant that kind of the mental geography of those time loops was a bit more tangible to the player, because if they don't know where they are in the loop, where is the jeopardy? Those were my two things that I really wanted to do, was that sense of urgency and knowing where you are in the loops. And also I have these little diagrams of it, which I call the time Sudoku, of what everything is going on in every single loop and where and why and how, so that when I handed it off to Dave, he could take it apart if he needed to and change things around, which he did, without his brain melting too. It was very important to me that the construction was obvious, and again, this is a game writing thing, that so much of game making is iterative, that it's very unlikely that the thing that you make will end up lock stock in the game. No matter how good it is, it will get changed because the game is changing around you. Again, very much like time travel. But yeah, and I at the time I was very annoyed at a number of tech bros, and continue to be. And so I just thought, these people are just going to be absolutely vapid, awful tech bros. And that opens up the player, when they have a character in front of them who is very wealthy, and they're going to be fine, whatever. They've just brought their ego along, and they're super annoying, so you are encouraged as a player to do awful things to them for fun. And so it's sort of encouraging the player to basically throw out the idea of the butterfly effect. That time travel is often be very careful, don't do it. And I wanted that mission to just be like, nothing matters, throw the dressing, do this, whatever, as long as you get out alive, who cares? And actually in at the end of my version, Fia actually constructs a bomb and makes the whole thing blow up because she gets sick of it. Which I kind of wish we'd kept, but probably harder to explain to Chronozen. But yeah, so I had all these sort of characters that I wanted to torment, basically, and give the player a license to torment them a little bit. But one of the things we talked about really early on, we refer to as the bincident, that Dave was like, oh, it would be really funny if, like, in one of the loops, Fia's trying to get into the bin and she can't get into the bin, and then we find out on a later loop that it's because another version of her is inside the bin. And I'm like, yes, I love that. I'm keeping, and every draft it was there. It was absolutely there.
That was great, that moment.
It's lovely, isn't it?
Yeah, really
it's
good.
so undignified as well. That poor Fia she's literal garbage in that moment, and just it's just, the whole thing is just really undignified and humiliating, and you start to realize why she drinks so heavily. Just, oh god. But yeah, so you can tell I'm very enthusiastic about that, and I when I was writing it, the Imani storyline wasn't really in existence. And so when I saw that David interspersed the gallery scenes, that was really clever, I thought. Because my original vision had been it was going to be 4 loops, can you believe? Because I wanted it to really push you beyond your tolerance, just be really like, this is chaos, I hate it. And I was like, I'm not sure about interspersing things in between because it loses intensity. But then when I played it through, I was like, no, actually, those really give you the contrast of, like, this is her, real world, and she's trying to work through some quite complicated stuff. Back to work. Yeah. Oh, this is ridiculous. These ridiculous people. And that contrast back and forth was really good, and just made the whole thing a lot richer, I think. And again, that's the teamwork element that you exactly. Throw stuff out there and you don't know quite how it's going to land.
It's interesting you say about there was going to be 4 loops, because I was going to ask you if it was always the plan to do 3 loops, but obviously not.
3 is a very important number in comedy.
Well, I don't know this,
but no, this is like a rule of comedy that you do things 3 times and that's funny. So the first time is a one-off. The second time you're establishing a pattern. And the third time you subvert expectations.
Gotcha.
Right? And once you know that, you will see it everywhere.
Yeah.
And I know John Ingold talks about this, that 3 is the correct number of dialogue choices because 4 is way too many, but 2 implies to the player there is a right and a wrong answer. Whereas if you've got 3, they don't know. And so when I was thinking about doing things with farce relies quite heavily on things happening 3 times, because the audience is almost waiting for that third thing to happen. And what I wanted was for them to feel, oh, we've done a third loop, like instinctively when you've done something 3 times, it's sort of finished. Wait, we're going back. Oh no. And that was sort of part of my kind of like vision of it being just like really overwhelming and stuff. But I totally understand why it's not there.
I mean, obviously in our conversations, you've mentioned about doing games in game jams and stuff.
Yes.
But this whole experience of doing that in Old Skies and then doing the game jams and everything, I mean, do you have ideas to write in for a whole game?
Of course I have. Of course I have. I've got like 4 different works in progress in the back of my head at any given time that I'm working on. So the last game jam that I did Crisis of Fae, which is a ridiculous and pun-heavy game about a fairy that steals your soul, and in order to get it back from her you have to learn how to be sarcastic.
Okay. That sounds cool.
it's good fun.
Yeah.
And it was literally that I saw that the jam was taking place and the the theme of the jam was 3 rules. And I remember thinking, I can't think of anything that would be, oh no, wait, I could do this. And then it sort of got its hooks into me. And we spent 2 weeks making it. And I learned so much about like leading a team and getting everybody like on board, while also bringing in everyone's ideas and like learning how to kind of say, I love your enthusiasm, but we only have 2 weeks. I'm so sorry. And, you know, learning how to kind of manage people in the loosest way. And it is something that I do really want to. It's my own fault. I wrote a cliffhanger to the ending, and now I want to find out what happens. So I guess I'm going to have to write it to find out what happens. But I think in any kind of medium, you do sort of reach a point when, you know, as much as I really love working with other people and working on other people's games, you do sort of want that sort of authorial control over your own particular vision. And I feel like I've worked with enough developers, writers, kind of creative directors and things that I've kind of been like learning from them without realizing about how they run their teams, how they make games, and getting a kind of a better idea. And it is one of the things that I want to work on through the BAFTA Breakthrough year, is maybe doing my own games. And I'm feeling very coy about it, but you know, I think that it's very rare in games for writers to run their own studios and for writers to be in charge of games. And obviously, because I've worked with Widget Eye so much, like that's a writer-led studio, and it just makes me think, oh, then maybe I could do that. And it's a tumultuous time to be making games right now. It's a tough old time in the games industry. But I think in terms of creative fulfillment, it's always really important to have your own projects on the go, even if they never quite see the light of day. To be creative on your own terms is super important. It fills your creative well, and that means you can then do other stuff too because you're fulfilled. I think that can be quite important. It's quite easy to burn out if you're only doing things that other people want from you. But yeah, so having your own little things. And I have a particular friend who she came up with the title Crisis of Fae, and she's always encouraging me to make bigger and worse puns. And so her official title on the game is Fairy Godmother. And, you know, I will send her stuff and say, am I being ridiculous, or would this be hilarious in the game? And she'll go, yes, do it, but more. And it's you know, I'm surrounded by enablers who are telling me I'm funny and I should do it. And, you know, thank goodness for that. You know, what is this life if you don't do a few silly things?
Exactly. It'd be boring otherwise, wouldn't it?
Exactly.
Do you dabble in coding or anything like that, or?
I know one markup language, which is Ink, and it was not a natural thing that I took to immediately, but it is a lovely, lovely language to work in, and Ink is gorgeous. It's a very elegant way of making interactive stories. And next on my list is Twine, because everyone says use Twine. And I don't know if I'll ever get to the stage where I'm doing programming. Anyway, in a year, I'll look back on this podcast and be like, I know 3 programming languages, you silly woman. Why would you say that?
Look at all these games I've made.
You never know who you're going to turn into, do you?
No,
right?
exactly.
What's the twist going to be, eh? But yeah, it's something that I'm interested in because I like to know how things work in a medium. So when I wrote plays, I still write plays, but I used to put on fringe productions, and I learned how to be a lighting designer, how to do the sound, how to do the set design, all of the things, so that I understood every element that went into it, so that when I was writing something, I wouldn't write a silly lighting cue or something that was physically impossible, or that I had a good understanding of how actors would work with the writing. And I think with game writing as well, the more I understand the process of game making from every corner, the better that writing has got to be. You don't necessarily have to know every programming language going, or understand how to make environment art, or the you don't have to be an expert at everything, but understanding and having an appreciation for the other department's skill and having a sort of a rough outline of what they do and what they might need from you. I think that makes for better games rather than just going, do something impossible. You actually know how to ask and what you're asking for.
I can't tell you how shell-shocked I was when Sally told me she used our episode in her application for the BAFTA breakthrough. The idea that this podcast played even the smallest part in her achieving this, frankly, sent me down a mixture of happy emotions, and it hasn't really sunk in yet. I was quite speechless for quite some time afterwards, and I can't wait to see how this propels Sally's career and the opportunities it will hopefully give her. Okay, you've now heard everything that I took at AdventureX. I hope that you have not only taken something away from the various chats, but also learned something about the show. It was a great weekend, and I seriously can't wait for the next one already. November 2026 seems a long way away. Before I go, I'd like to thank Thomas, Dave, and Sally for their time. It really was a pleasure to meet and talk with them. I'd also like to take this chance to thank the organisers once more for welcoming me in such a friendly way and for putting on such a well-run event. Don't forget to check out somanygames.co.uk for all our latest reviews, articles and interviews. Links to the Discord, website and our Patreon will all be in the show description. Thank you for listening. Until next time, my name has been Jason. Please take care out there and happy gaming.